Hi, Liz. Welcome to the Biz Chicks podcast.
Hi, Natalie. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on here and introduce my community to you because you're a huge part of my life and my mastermind. And I want to get into how we met and connected. But first, since you've never been on the show, I've got to get some background and ask that question I ask every guest, which should know what's coming because I know you're a listener too. But I want to hear where you grew up and what you were like as a little girl, Liz.
Well, I was born in Boston, and my parents will tell you that they had to make a decision, college or kindergarten. So we moved up to New Hampshire, about 60 miles away, and that's where I grew up. New Hampshire is a very different place now. It's a bit more populated. Our biggest city had about 100,000 people in it, and we called it Manch Vegas.
You called it what?
The city's name is Manchester, but we called it Manch Vegas.
Why?
Because that was the big city. But as far as what I was like as a child, I was curious. You know that kid that always asks why, how, like they're never satisfied with an answer? That was me.
That does not surprise me, Liz, at all. I can totally see you being very curious. What were you like in school? Were you like a straight A student, and were you a good listener, or were you interrupting the teacher? And I don't think you were a bully.
All of the above. I was the person that got along with everyone, but yes, I would interrupt sometimes the teacher. I did grow out of that eventually. I was a good student. I wasn't a straight A student, but I got, really good marks. I was close to a straight A student, but I wasn't a straight A student.
Okay, and you are the first historian I have had on the show, so that's exciting.
It is.
And so tell us, for us lay people, what your PhD is on and what you studied and what your passion for history, kind of maybe just like a little background of your passion for history and your area, your field of study.
Well, I'm an historian of early America, and I came by my passion really early. Some kids get to go to the beach every summer. We got to go to museums. My parents had a travel trailer, and my brother and I would get into the trailer. Well, we drive in the car, but we'd camp out in the trailer, and we would go out to Michigan and Canada and all over New England, and we would visit like every museum and historic site in town. There's a funny little story. When we were little kids, my brother and I are 2 years apart. He must have been like 4, and we were at Mark Twain's house in Hartford, Connecticut, and he uttered the words, "No more dead people's houses." Because we would always visit them, but my parents must have done something right because we both went into history. He's a secondary school teacher. He teaches high school history. And I went on to grad school to become a professional historian. So,
okay. And you are a fellow podcaster.
I am. I love history, and there wasn't a history podcast I really wanted to listen to on a regular basis, so I created one.
And tell us about your podcast.
So my podcast is called Ben Franklin's World. Each week I interview an historian who sheds insight onto our early American past. So we'll discuss events or people, and we have a really great conversation about it for like 45 minutes.
And you do something very unique, which I don't know of any other podcasters that do. I often interview authors, and I'll be sent their books or I will buy their book. Usually now I ask for a copy, now that I know that I can, that I'm part of the media. But you read every book.
I do.
So you read a book every week.
I do.
And it's not like a beach read.
No, it's a heavy history book usually.
And it's usually like something like it's a book someone took their dissertation and turned into a book. So to me, it seems very heavy. I'm not sure how you're doing it.
Well, I'm a history geek, so I love reading it. It can be difficult sometimes. Some books are written better than others, but I do enjoy reading it. And I think that has to deal with the success of the podcast. I started out reading the entire book, and that allows me to ask questions you wouldn't hear in a standard interview. Now that I listen to other interview podcasts, it's like they read the introduction, maybe chapter 1, maybe the conclusion. So you never really hear about the middle of the book. You always get well, tell us some more about your book. And you never get a satisfactory answer. So I guess I've taken my childhood curiosity and plowed it into the podcast as well.
So you self-identified as a history geek, which opened the door for me to ask about the bobbleheads behind you, Liz, which I actually know about because they're going to be in your crowdfunding video coming up. But so they're so funny. So you actually in your crowdfunding video, you talk about they have specific positions on the shelf. Can you share that little bit you shared?
Yes, let me move the camera so you can get the full view.
So there's her bobblehead.
So they're all the founding fathers. I've written the company. I have asked for the founding mothers collection. My men are getting lonely, but they are not forthcoming. So the founding fathers are over there. The Virginians are on one side of the shelf and the Easterners are on the other. And this is because the Virginians don't always get along with the delegates from Massachusetts. So I had to keep George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison separate from John and Samuel Adams, John Hancock, and especially New Yorker Alexander Hamilton. And I even had to put John Hancock and Samuel Adams in between John Adams and Alexander Hamilton because historically they just don't get along.
See, I probably would have known like one of those things maybe. So that's why I love being around you, because I get to refresh my history. And you make it fun and interesting. I mean, if a teacher had just had those bobbleheads in their class and explained that to me, I would never have forgotten it.
It's true. And you know what you can't see is downstairs, I actually have a bust of John Hancock that was given to me as a gift. It's a full-size bust, and he wears a Red Sox hat because John Hancock would be a Red Sox fan.
And that's a big part of your life too. So tell us about your passion for baseball.
My passion for baseball started early on. When I was 5, I remember asking my parents for my birthday for a set of baseball tickets. And so they obliged. We got tickets to go see the Red Sox. I was supposed to see them play the California Angels.
Hey, that's my local team, so let's be nice.
I know. Here's the funny thing. So I remember walking into Fenway, and Fenway is an amazing ballpark. It's historic. It's small. Like, the players can hear you. We had tickets out in the grandstand, out in like right field, and it was raining. I never actually got to see the Red Sox and the Angels played. It was rained out. But I made my parents sit there, and I just took in the ambiance. And the guys behind us, they got drunk, and one guy tripped, and he dumped beer all over me, and I've just been hooked. I don't know what that says about me, but I've been hooked on Fenway Park and going to baseball games ever since. But, you know, it's been a big part of my life. And then when I met my partner, Tim, he started taking me, he courted me at baseball games. And he asked me to marry him on the Green Monster during a Yankee Red Sox game.
Wait, what's the Green Monster?
It's this big wall out in left field, and I forget how high it is, but they call it the Monster because it's really high to hit a ball, over. A lot of the balls will just slam into the Monster. So if you have an opposing team, they're never really sure how to field the ball. So it's like a home team advantage.
And you have season tickets now, right?
Yeah, we have season tickets. So we went to Game 2 of the 2004 World Series, and we signed up for season tickets, Tim and I, and it took 7 or 8 years, but we got off the list, and now we have full season tickets. We don't go to all the games. We split it with some friends, so we go to about half the games. And we saw the entire 2013 World Series run, and since then it's been kind of downhill for the Red Sox. I'm optimistic that next season will be better, but the last 2 seasons, it's just like you have to go there and love baseball and just sitting there.
I love you post a lot about it on Facebook, so it's fun to see that is like a huge part of your life. I'm sure if I visited you, I might get to go to a game. That's date night. Okay.
Date night.
All right. So you're here because one, I wanted to introduce you to my community anyway, and for them to learn about your podcast, which again is Ben Franklin's World. But you're in my personal mastermind, and I'm in a series right now called Masterminds, Networks, and Networking in Teams, and I'm wanting for my community to hear how I found the people that I chose to have in my inner circle and to be vulnerable with, because we're very vulnerable with each other in our mastermind. We just got off a mastermind call, and I was very close to tears because I'm overwhelmed with a lot of things going on in my life right now. And I told the girls I couldn't cry because I was going to be on video and on Blab. And so we kept it, at a reasonable emotional level. But I can't tell you guys, just from being in that call just now, they helped me clarify some things that I just could not clarify for myself, because you just can't see into your own business. So you really need, whether it's a coach or a mentor or a mastermind, you need people around you looking into your business. So I want to kind of go back and share how our relationship has evolved and developed, so that I'm hoping people it'll help them to look into their network to create what we have. And And I think that our first contact ever was you emailed me about a year ago, almost exactly.
Yeah, my friend Liana said, "Hey, I know you like podcasts. You have to check out this podcast called Biz Chicks." So I started listening to your show, and all the women you've had on there give fantastic advice. So I think I emailed you for advice, actually, or just maybe even to let you know I was listening. I was impressed. I don't,
Thank you.
I don't email everybody. I should.
Yeah, it's a big deal it's for those of you that are podcasters or thinking about becoming podcasters. We don't hear from listeners very often, and so especially when you're kind of first starting out. And so it is a big deal to hear from a listener, and it takes a lot of people are listening to you. They're not on their computer, so they're not like, oh, I'm listening to Liz, and or I'm listening to Natalie, and I'll just send her an email right now. You're usually doing something else. So to after the fact, either respond on social media or send an email, post on the show notes. It can take a lot. That's why so many of us have enjoyed having private Facebook groups, because it makes it really easy for our community to interact with us. But so Liz, I remember getting that email from you, and one of the things you told me was that you were going to be launching a podcast. And so when is your 1 year anniversary? I mean, we're right here.
Next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday. Okay. So it'll probably this will probably air a week after that. So on the podcast. So, yay. I just want to congratulate you, because making it through a year is a huge, huge milestone.
Thank you. It feels good. I'm
excited
about it.
You did like a soft launch, which I think you described it to me as you published the podcast on your website initially. And then maybe you could take us back through the timeline of your show and how this year has evolved, because you've had huge success, and Liz's show is extremely popular and well received, and she has more listeners than I do. So I hope some of them are going to listen to this and then come listen to me too. But Liz has an amazing audience, very interactive, very interested in what she's doing, and so I'm excited for you guys to hear her show too. So Liz, take us back through the timeline a little bit of Ben Franklin's world, including the 18 months before you started.
I knew you were going to go there. So long before I became a podcaster, dinosaurs roamed the earth. No, I'm kidding. I was an avid podcast listener, and shows like yours were enriching my life. And I looked for history podcasts, and there are a lot of great ones out there, but none of them were conversation based. And so I was like, well, I'm going to start a podcast. And actually, initially, my initial idea for the show is I wanted to do serial, but for history. But that's a lot of work. I looked for a co-host, but I'd say podcast to people, and they're like, what? Like, what are you talking about? What's a podcast? So then I was like, well, I know a lot of historians. Maybe I can just have a conversation with them each and every week. So yes, there was 18 months of figuring out how I would do the show, what the show would look like, what I would call the show. I kid you not. I went to bed Christmas Eve, 2013. I woke up at 3 a.m. Christmas morning, and I said, Ben Franklin's World or Ben Franklin's America. And I was like, that's it. And I jumped out of bed and I wrote it down. So I knew the show would be called Ben Franklin's World. And I'm not an expert on Ben Franklin, but I knew that most people recognized his name and could tell you approximately when he lived, which is about the approximate time period of the show. So from there, I started looking into like, well, how would you launch? What size audience do you need? What kind of technical equipment? What would the website look like? There's a lot that goes into the back end, and that's where a lot of that research happened, was on the back end of the podcast. And then once I'd secured my first interviews, I started interviewing people. I said, okay, well, I'm going to build up content. I want to be a weekly show. My research said that if you really want to build an audience, you should have a weekly show and produce on a consistent day. So I was like, all right, well, I'll release on Tuesdays. But I was really, like most podcasters, nervous about releasing the first episode. So I said, all right, I'm going to release this on my website, so I have to release it. But then I'm going to let friends and family know that it's there so they can get back to me and give me some constructive criticism on it. So that's what we did, is I soft launched Ben Franklin's World. All the while, I'm blogging on my blog about how I'm going to start a podcast, how I'm going to do it. I'd ask for advice on everything from cover art to music to voiceover. Should the voiceover artist be a male or a female? They decided that, a male should introduce me. So we have Reverend Kurt as our voiceover guy. He does a fantastic job. And Yeah, so Ben Franklin's World was on my website, and then in December, we launched into iTunes. So December 2nd will mark the 1 year anniversary in iTunes. And then the last Tuesday in December last year, because December was a 5-week month, it worked out that that's when it went weekly, because my intention was the first week of January I was going to go weekly. So we've been weekly since that last week in December last year.
What was it like getting started? Because it can be a challenge to get people to be a guest on a podcast that hasn't launched yet. And then also the people in the field that you're interviewing aren't necessarily aware of podcasts or listening to podcasts. And so what was that like, those first few guests?
Well, I had to find historians who knew what a podcast was. And I was really lucky. So I like to experiment with tech and history. It was like I was taking tech and taking history and mixing it together and throwing it at the wall to see what would stick. And one of my experiments was with Google Glass. And I had blogged about using Google Glass in the archives and how it could help us research history. And Rich Newman at the Library Company of Philadelphia took note, and he said, "Hey, are you coming to Shear? Would you bring Google Glass into our archive so we could test it out?" And I'm like, "Sure, this will be great." And I've never been to the Library Company. So
and wait, what's Shear? What's that?
Sorry. That is the Society for Historians of the Early American Republic Conference. It happens every July, and it is an awesome conference.
Okay, so he runs the conference?
He doesn't run the conference, but the conference was in Philadelphia at a hotel just around the corner from the Library Company. And now the Library Company is a very special place. This was a library that Benjamin Franklin and his fellow artisans set up in the early to mid 1700s, and it is still around. And so it had a Ben Franklin connection, and I knew I kind of wanted the opening episode to be Ben Franklin. So as Rich is taking me around the Library Company, and I got a whole behind the scenes tour, which for a history geek like myself was very, very special. I asked him, I said, "Hey, I'm going to start this podcast. It's called Ben Franklin's World. It's not really about Ben Franklin, but it's about the world he lived in, the world he created, and the world that produced him. Do you think we could do an episode on the Library Company? I've been looking for something special for my first episode. Would you do it?" And Rich was like, "I think Ben Franklin, he was an innovator. He'd love this. So of course we'll do it." And then he was like, "I'm not just going to give you one interview. I'm going to give you 3. So we actually opened with a 3-part episode on the history of the Library Company, the present of the Library Company and their exhibitions, and then the future of the Library Company. So we launched with those 3 episodes and a 4th episode. So my first interview with a historian about a book was with Thomas Foster, and we talked about his new book called Sex and the Founding Fathers, which is a fantastic book. But I was so nervous to do the interview. He actually was the first person I interviewed, and I was having some tech issues that day. Of course, I would have tech issues.
Of course.
And I didn't have a great mic back then. I had a good mic, but not a great mic. So you'd hear all this background noise, and I was just like, oh my goodness. But we got through the interview, and I was just so happy. I mean, he was so gracious. They were all so gracious in helping me get started. But it was a challenge, I had to find people who knew what a podcast was. And now historians contact me all the time, like, "Can I get on your show?" Because there is no other show about history that interviews other historians. So it's awesome.
Yeah. What's it felt like to have that shift? Because I've kind of had that shift happen too, where I have more people approaching me than I'm approaching. And but I've told people I actually really like the hunt of finding people I want to interview. So there's something about like, I want to have this person on the show, and then they say yes, and I get a little excitement and high from it. So I rarely right now am bringing anyone on the show that pitches me. But what did that, like, the scale tipped at some point where you're getting a lot of pitches, and how did that feel, and how are you handling them? Because you can't have all these people on.
The scale tipped this summer at conference season, and it's probably because I went out and I handed out all these bookmarks about the show. So this summer, my inbox just became flooded with pitches, and I take this responsibility very seriously. Like, first, it is my show, but it's about my listeners, and they have sent me a slew of requests. So every decision I make is about my listeners. Does the pitch match what they're interested in? Does it match something that I'm interested in? Because if I'm interested in it, we're going to have a better interview too. So there's all these different aspects I weigh, but I take it very seriously. And it's not just because I take what I do seriously, but there isn't another project like this in the profession. And the humanities are in a period, history is in a period of struggling to survive. People don't get what professional historians do. They don't get why the study of history is important. And I look at Ben Franklin's world as a tool to help bring history back to the forefront of the public mind, because history is important. We can use the lessons of the people and the events of the past to help build a better future, because we like to think we're new and novel, but really we're not. Like, our tech is new and novel, but human behavior, not so new and novel. So there are a lot of correlations between what happened in the past and similarities with the problems and struggles and international relations that we have today in the present.
I love that, and I love you have you carry a lot of weight of the industry, for other historians and for the public, and you're really I feel like you're taking care of the whole history community in a way. And there's something you shared with me that it never would have occurred to me, but we hear this huge focus on STEM, which is science and technology and mathematics, engineering and mathematics. Did I get it right? Science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and a push for that, especially for girls and young women, and for funding for that. And of course, when one thing gets funded, other things don't get funded. And I think that's what you've said has been happening in your field.
Yeah, I mean, I think people would fund the humanities. I live by the principle that people are interested in history, and the success of my podcast demonstrates that. We're going to go over 320,000 downloads. I'm actually hoping we cross 325,000 downloads by next Wednesday, before our 1-year anniversary. So that would be fantastic. But that's huge, and only a small portion of the population knows what a podcast is. So I'm very humbled by that. It's incredible. But yeah, I look at Ben Franklin's world as a tool to help people realize that history is important. And I know our friend Romy would probably say, I actually think of Romy as having, a really great liberal arts education in addition to all the science she had. And the liberal arts education is what teaches you to think outside the box. It's what allows you to pull from all this different human experience and bring it into your present, and help you solve problems and help you think your way through what you need to think through. The best scientists are the ones with the liberal arts education. And, something to bring home, the United States at the moment considers itself in competition with China. And they look at the Chinese and they say, oh, well, they have those exams and their kids are so smart. How can we improve things? So in the US, you've seen a shift towards examinations in schools, which, I mean, personally, I don't think is the best way to learn, but this is what society has decided. Well, in China, they don't have liberal arts education, but they're starting to implement it, because they're sending a lot of their students to the United States to get a liberal arts education, because their people couldn't think outside the box to innovate, to create things like the iPhone and the tech that we enjoy in the US. And so the liberal arts is really important. It's not just the study of history and the study of languages, law, knowledge. It's the study of how we think. It helps us think. So that's why I'm really passionate about it.
I think that's one of the things that attracted me to you, in terms of someone I wanted to spend time with and invest in you and have you invest in me, was hearing how you thought about things. So we had that initial email conversation, and then we were both in a private Facebook group for female podcasters called She Podcasts. If you're a female podcaster, asked to join it. A lot of great conversation happens in there. So I could see you responding in there, and I was responding in there. And then you messaged me, because I had put a post in about, I think Katie put a post in first about her downloads, and then I put a response about my downloads, and you contacted me to share some things you thought I could be doing to improve my downloads, to get more listeners, and to connect with my community and work with my community. And then I had some ideas for you too. And then you expressed interest in masterminding at some point. At that point, I was doing a paid mastermind. And so a few months later, we took that in. And then a few months later, I was looking to form a personal mastermind. I came to the realization that I needed a mastermind where I wasn't the leader, that I was a member of a collective group. And it started out with myself and Dr. Romy Mushtak and Maria Dismondi, who's a children's book author. And so it was the three of us. And we were masterminding, having a great time for about a month or two just on our own. And then I knew we needed some more people. And I heard you on the Podcast Producers, which is a podcast about podcasting. Would you say it's a podcast that some friends of ours, Jessica Rhodes and Corey Coates, put together. If you're interested in the podcasting industry, how it's evolved, the way they put together is kind of a la Serial. If you've heard Serial, it's a combining lots of different interviews into one, or and audio clips into each episode, and they did a 10-episode series. And Liz was one of the featured podcasters in that series. So I'd already knew about Liz, and then I'm hearing her talk about, and here I got to hear how you think. Really, that was what, and I was like, whoa, Liz is smart. And I really like how she sees things, because you come at things from a little different angle than I do and some of the other people I know do. And so I approached Romy and Maria, and I said, I want to add a historian to our group. We've got a MD who's no longer an MD. Dr. Romy, she's always going to be an MD, right? But she's focused on mindfulness and integrative medicine and speaking. Maria is a former teacher and is a children's book author. And I really look for diversity in groups that I put together, because I feel that that's in all the research and business on building teams, and what makes a successful team is having a diverse team, because then you get this different thinking and different ideas, instead of like, well, we all have the same idea and we all agree. So there's going to be like, sometimes we don't agree. Like you might suggest something and I'm like, no, or we suggest something to you and you're like, well, no, like I don't want that business point of view. That doesn't work for me. Or you're like, oh, that's interesting. I never thought of it that way. So we invited you into the group. And what is the mastermind experience of this? I know you've been in other masterminds too. So maybe you could share what this group's been like for you and maybe compare it to some other experiences you've had.
Well, I have to say, when I received your email about joining your mastermind, I was like, what does she want with me? I mean, like, I don't even know if I have a business. And of course, Katie explained to me later, and she's like, Liz, you have a passion and you're trying to figure out how you can make money for your passion. And that is a business. So, yeah, I guess I have a business. So I always felt that, it was me who was going to take advantage of you and all of your savvy business knowledge versus you taking advantage of me. But it works. Yeah, I do offer a different perspective, and you offer a different perspective than how I would think. And it's great. Another mastermind I had been in, I have some friends, and we all decided after we got our PhDs that we didn't want a traditional academic career. And so we just started meeting about like how we could push each other to form a business. Now one has a successful career coaching business. Another one is a freelance writer, and we still keep tabs on each other, even though we're no longer in a regular mastermind. But it just helps to have perspective. And, being a historian, I can tell you that hindsight is 20/20. I can always tell you, I love the past because you just know how it's going to end. And something scary about the present is you just don't know what the future is. But it is easier to look on like your problems or Romy's problems or Maria's problems, or just different strategies and things you want to implement in your business. And for me to give you all sorts of feedback because I can see it with fresh eyes, where it's easy for you to look in on my life and be like, Liz, you're crazy. You should be doing it this way. And I'd be like, oh, that thought just never occurred to me. So I just find it really helpful.
Yeah, I want to encourage everyone to find someone for their mastermind that is like Liz, someone that's in a different industry, someone that sees things differently. I always like to have people in my life that are really artsy because I am not artsy. I have a friend that's a photographer, and she and I see the world completely different. I'm a little more black and white, but she's like gray. The world's gray to her. You need someone like her too, Liz, because we're both pretty logical most of the time. And so actually when I was thinking about our group, I'm like, that's actually, we have some creativity. I feel like Maria has a lot of creativity. Katie, we all have our little ways of creativity, but we don't have like an artist. So I think if we're ever to grow our group at all, I think we could use like an artist type person to round us out. But I don't think anyone would have looked at us on the outside and thought, put these people together and magic's going to happen. But I feel like magic happens in our group like every week. What do you think?
Yeah, each and every week there's a little bit of magic. Everybody walks away with something, even if you're not in the hot seat. Someone says something brilliant and you're like, oh, that's great. And then we always have Romy to remind us to stay grounded.
Yes, Romy helps us stay grounded. And you are, this might surprise your audience. You are our resident DJ.
Yeah, in addition to being a history geek, I was a band geek. I played the trumpet. I was in the high school marching band, and then I was in the Penn State Blue Band and followed the football team around. So I love music, and we do a happy dance. We're supposed to celebrate our victories. That's what Romy says, is celebrate the little things, and that requires music. So yeah, I try to find us, some sort of tune that we can dance out to. Wait till we get into my big band phase. We'll have
Oh,
you
wow.
we'll have you out there doing some swing.
We'll do some swing. That'll be fun. So we actually like dance. We'll sit there and Liz will play us some music and we'll dance. And today we couldn't get our music to work, so we just danced without music, our own music in our head. But it's fun to have a little, I guess it's like a way of ice breaking our way into our meeting each week, that you've kind of provide that fun levity for us. And I appreciate that. Um, One thing I wanted to, I kind of lost my train of thought, Liz, but I want to get a little more background of you for your community, because you're interviewing, you're interviewing people every week, and I want them to get to know a little bit more about you. So what are maybe one or two things about you that would surprise your audience that they don't know? We've covered that you're a baseball fan, but I think they probably knew that. We heard you were in band. What else?
I don't know. I really try to be who I am on the show. I really am a history geek, and I love going into the archive. Actually, maybe this is something they don't know, although I think I said it in an episode. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a pirate. And part of my desire to be a pirate was I had a lazy eye, and they had to correct my vision with a patch. And it was one point I didn't even have an eyebrow because they had like the adhesive on it. So I begged my mom, I was like 5 or 6. I was like, "Can I please not wear the patch?" And they were like, "Well, we can give you a pirate patch, but you have to promise to actually wear it." So I created this world where I was a pirate. And really, being a historian is kind of like a pirate. I mean, what do pirates do every day? They search for buried treasure.
Treasure. Yeah.
What do I do when I go in the archive? I'm searching for the answers to my question. It's like buried treasure, and they're buried in boxes and in stacks of um, folders. There's papers, and you just have to go through them and try to figure out uh, where the treasure is, where the information you seek is. So maybe that's something they didn't know, but I really am an archive rat. I love it in the archives.
That's so fun. I like that idea that it's searching for buried treasure. I figured out what I was wanting to say. I wanted to share how you helped me about a month ago. I was trying to accomplish a goal, and I'd had the same goal for a few weeks. And you did something that kind of helped motivate me in our group. And so feel like it's a great example for other people that are in masterminds, and how they can interact with each other during the week, just to have some fun way of motivating each other.
Yeah, okay, so here's the funny thing. As tech savvy as I am, I didn't know what a meme was until about a week, the week before that meeting. I thought that they were like the quizzes you received in the email, and apparently those were memes, but memes had evolved beyond that, and I didn't know that. And so I had to ask my partner Tim, and Tim works for Google, so he's very tech savvy, and that's all I can tell you is he works for Google. He's an engineer. I don't really know what he does beyond that. And he explained to me what a meme was, and then I was so proud of myself that I knew what a meme was, and then it actually came up in that meeting. And then Natalie's like, "Yeah, I'm just not, I need to accomplish this goal." And it was like the second or third week we'd heard it. And I was like, "No, if she says she's going to do it, she's going to do it." So
Yes.
then I started making memes. I had the one of like Willy Wonka. So Natalie, have you done whatever it is you said you were going to do next? And then I don't have human children. I have two four-legged children, Thatcher and Sprocket. They're mini schnauzers. Thatcher's a poser. He'll take a picture really well, and he loves to be on camera. Sprocket, like, I whip out the smartphone, which is my primary camera, and Sprocket's like, "Not again, Mom. Like, why are you going to take another picture?" And I took this one picture of him. They have the schnauzer cut, so they have the big bushy eyebrows. And my friends on Facebook were like, "Those are judgmental eyebrows," and they're totally right. I mean, Sprocket judges me every time I take his picture. So then I just started creating memes out of judgmental Sprocket eyebrows. There was like pictures of Sprocket. It was like, so Natalie, did you get on that? Like, Natalie, are you done? Like, Sprocket was acting perky one day. So I just kept sending her Sprocket memes.
Yeah. And then Yoda showed up too.
I love Yoda.
So it was just really fun. It was like, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't disappoint Sprocket. And then Yoda is on my back. So it really helped. And it was just that little motivator. So I would just suggest if you have a group or someone you're an accountability partner with doing something, it was just fun and humorous, but it also was like, oh, Liz is really going to make sure I hit this goal this week. And so I am going to be on it because I don't want to disappoint Liz, Willy Wonka, Sprocket, or Yoda. And so plus all the other, I did it. It really was motivating and helpful. I might need you to do it again this week, Liz, because I have the same goal for 2 weeks in a row. And I may need like a little one, or maybe just one meme. Just one meme might help me this week. All right. Well, Liz, I want to hear if you would just share, and I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this, but I think you can wing it. A couple of productivity tools that you use. I know you have a few favorites. So why don't you share with us what are some things that are helping you stay organized and productive with your podcast and all that you have going on?
I have two tools that I love. One is OmniFocus, and I'm sorry, PC people, it's only available for Mac, but it's a project management tool, and that gives me a day-to-day schedule. It just reminds me of the things that I need to do, and it works really well for me. The other tool I'm in love with, Trello, and I signed up for Trello Business Class, and I can connect my Google Drive and my Dropbox for each podcast episode. And I have several different Trello boards. One is a production board. So I have a list of episodes that I need to record, a list of episodes that have been recorded, a list with episodes that are at my audio engineer because I have that outsourced. A list of episodes that I'm working with, and a list of episodes that have been posted. And it just really helps visually. I can move different cards, which are what the episodes are, around. And I have a checklist. So it reminds me of every step I need to do to before an episode is officially posted. So everything gets done. And so Trello Business Class, I really love it.
Liz, can you share how people can get in touch with you, and also a little bit about how you're starting to monetize your podcast? You have a cool campaign coming out.
So I live on Twitter. At Liz Covart is my handle. I am on Facebook, but Twitter is where I love to be. Not to say I don't love Facebook. I shouldn't say that, because there are great people on Facebook, but I like to communicate in 140 characters or less.
You're so efficient.
Yes, I love efficiency. As far as Ben Franklin's World, you can visit benfranklinsworld.com, or you can go to iTunes, subscribe to the podcast, or this will get you.
Oh, this is new. This is new.
Ben Franklin's World has apps for both iPhone and Android. I just got those like last week, and they are so cool. So I love that. So that's one way I'm starting to monetize the podcast. Those apps I charge $2 each for. And I'm doing that because my audience said that they would pay for it and that they were eager to help me. They were eager to support me. So I went that route. So they're $2, still very affordable for an app. And another campaign I have coming up that will be up by the end of October. My goal was to get it in October. So by the end of October, we'll have a crowdfunding campaign that's coming up. So I've been really working hard on the back end of that, among some other projects. And I have a video. It has a behind the scenes look. You were impressed with the bobblehead with like a distance view. We get up and close with those bobbleheads.
Oh yeah, it's special.
Yeah,
everyone needs to see it. So definitely go back and check out. It'll be on your website. A link on your website, Liz.
It'll definitely be on the website. I can actually tell you the link will be benfranklinsworld.com/movement.
Because you're starting a movement.
I am. The movement's already started. Like I said, my goal with Ben Franklin's World is to help people think historically, to bring history back to the forefront of the public mind, because people used to think about history all the time. It's only in the last 50 years or so that they stopped thinking about it every day. So I like to think of Ben Franklin's World as a movement to help bring history back to the forefront of the public mind. And my audience is already involved just by listening to the show and telling their friends about it and considering the ideas. I really don't have a political or any sort of agenda with this podcast. I want to give you history from all different viewpoints so you can think about what you think what you think of everything. So you can pick a viewpoint for yourself and take lessons from the past that work for you. And so when you do that, you're participating in the movement. So it's really easy to do.
Liz, you have a question you ask all your guests at the end of the show. Can you share what that question is? It's about how things would be different.
Oh, the time warp.
Yeah, the time warp
even
question.
Have special music. All the music there is Bach, and that's because Bach was a contemporary of Franklin. But we play the toccata and fugue, which is the da-da-da. It's really jarring, but that's the point, because then we go into hypothetical history. So I like to think about sometimes how history might have turned out if something had occurred differently or if someone had acted differently. So based on the topic of the day, that is something I will ask. So I'm trying to think of what was a good one. Can you remember?
Well, I'll listen. One of my favorite episodes was about step families. It's one of your earlier episodes, and it's about like in the teens or early 20s.
It's episode 27 with Lisa Wilson.
Okay, there we go. You see how her mind works? I bet she has every single one memorized.
BenFranklinsWorld.com/027.
So she went through and shared how there were different historical figures had step families, and then you asked her what it would have been like. And I found that so profound. So I'm actually going to ask the question to you, and I know you like to be prepared, but I like to be spontaneous. So I'm going to make you be a little spontaneous here. What would your life be like right now if you had not started the podcast? Let's have a time warp, and what would happen, right? Where would you be? What would you be doing?
I might have my book finished. I've been working on turning my dissertation into a book, and I've started research on a second book project on the Articles of Confederation. That's the second book. But my first book looks at how the people of Albany, New York became American. And it's a unique story because they started out as Dutch colonists, only they weren't 100% Dutch. About half the population came from elsewhere in Europe. So the people of Albany had to establish first a Dutch, then a British, and then an American identity. And it's an exciting story. The New Englanders come in after the Revolution, and they try to turn Albany into like this New England town with the white church and the Puritan values. And the people of Albany are like, no, that's just not for us. We're willing to work with you, but we're not willing to just become New Englanders. So we talk about things like gutters and street paving. And I've been working on that, but I haven't touched it in about 2 months because the podcast just takes so much work. And I'm not complaining about it. I mean, the podcast is great. I love it. And all the extra work I've had to put in is because it's just doing so well. I never thought about what success would look like or how much extra time success might actually take. So I am really grateful for it, but it's just been unexpected. So that would be one thing, is maybe my book would be done.
And I know from my perspective, I don't think you'd be in my life, and I can't imagine that right now. I mean, I don't think we would.
I probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
I'd probably still be listening to your podcast.
Well, I just think it shows the value of putting yourself out there, and you just never know what's going to happen when you start new things and launch new things. And so, Liz, I'd love for you to close us out with an inspirational quote and share what it means to you.
So I had to think about this one, but then I recalled something that Benjamin Franklin said in his autobiography. And he says, quote, "If you would not be forgotten as soon as you were dead and rotten, either write things worth the reading or do things worth the writing," end quote. And I like that quote because it expresses everything that I want to do. I want to make society better. I want to leave my imprint on it. I want to leave some sort of legacy behind. Being a historian and studying all these people, I think it's nice. You know, I'll come across someone who didn't expect to be remembered by the past, but then I'll remember them. So yeah, it's a little vain, but I'd like history to remember me. But I also really want to make history accessible and exciting for people. And I'm always working on my writing to try and tell a story in a way that people want to read about it, that they'll actually, pick up the book. So that quote is important to me for a couple reasons for that. It's important to me for those reasons.
Liz, thank you so much for joining me for your first ever blab. I think it's my third, and for being on the Biz Chicks podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor.
All right, guys, that'll conclude our audio. That'll be what's going to go on iTunes. Liz, do you have a few minutes? There's a couple questions for you. Would you mind? Sure. Do you have a couple minutes? All right. So Carol Cox, who's a big part of the Biz Chicks community, another fellow Twitter addict, wonders if you batch your podcast interviews.
I did that towards the middle of the year. I actually ran into a problem where we had so much snow in Boston, it was affecting the internet and other people around. So a couple of people canceled on me, and I was like, oh no, I committed to doing a weekly show, and I'm not sure I can live up to that promise. So then I started booking public history sites, so places that I could talk about history and research but not read a book about, on a day that I'd also interview a historian about a book. And now I have so many episodes that are recorded that just need to be processed. So I don't batch process them, but I have batch recording. And now I'm very much looking forward to going back to just one a week.
Very cool. Hey, Maria and Romy, I see you're still here. I want to try having more than one person on the screen. Are either of you available to come in? Okay, so I just want to see what it's like to have other people on here. Romy, if you want to join, we can be on there too. I don't know if Romy's out and about or what. Oh, she said she can. This is going to be fun. I want to see what it's like. I want to try doing a blab with multiple people. And all right. Oh, and we've got the kids up. Can you talk, Maria?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's loud.
Oh.
There we go. Oh, hey, Dexter. And Romy, I think your connection is low, so you're having a hard time getting the hi, buddy.
Yeah, we're making shrinky dinks.
Oh my gosh. Hello. I love that.
And supporting my girls at the same time.
Yes, your kids, they think that we're the people on the computer. So, okay, Romy, it's not working. Hey, Carol, are you able to, oh, I'm kicking you out, Romy. I'm sorry. I don't know if it means you can come back. Carol, I don't know if you want to try to join in, but you can. I'm hoping to have Carol on in another episode. You just asked to join, and I think it lets you join in. Carol is really great at networking online and offline, I'm pretty sure, too. So I want to do a panel on networking. So I just want to, thanks for your patience, you guys. Anyone just watching you, we're just trying out, our interview's over with Liz Covart, and we're just trying out, hey, Carol.
Hi.
Hey, you guys, this is Carol. She works at Full Sail University. That's one of her jobs, and she's about to launch a course on public speaking, which I'm super excited to take. And she lives in Orlando and so I wanted her and Romy to get together sometime.
Yes, that's on our list of things to do, Dr. Romy. So hopefully we'll be able to get together. And Natalie, thank you so much for bringing all of us together in the Biz Chicks community. And I think that's what you are so great at doing. And I love seeing you all on video.
It's really, it's out of mine and Liz's comfort zone the most, probably Liz the most. But she's a team player. And so she was willing to do this for me. And yeah, so we just want to try it out. Well, I'm going to let you guys all go. And I just wanted to say thank you so much, Liz, for being on the show. And thanks, Carol, for popping on, and Maria. And I'll see you guys all in the different places I see you, okay?
Bye. Thanks.
Thanks to everybody who joined us on Blab. You can find me at bizchicks.com or on iTunes at BIZCHIX, BizChicks podcast.